you know is of product design and the basics, because the terms you will be using too often during this event would be innovation, product design. Then you will be talking about design for manufacturing, rapid prototyping. So what I have tried to do is create one presentation which gives you a basic idea that if you want to do innovative product design, or if you want to do kind of conventional design thinking, what are the various thoughts that can cross your mind, and what is the information which is available within the working domain of any product designer. Now, any product designer need to know about materials, how they will relate to the manufacturing processes. Now, another thing that I want to highlight here is that all product designers need not necessarily be mechanical engineers or civil engineers or engineers per se. Designer can be from varied backgrounds. They can be from fashion, there can be fashion designer, they can be from the field of fashion, they can be from the field of movies, they are also creative people. So designers can come from any educational background. Why I am highlighting this at this point of time is that we should not feel that my background is not mechanical, or my background is not architecture, or my background is not management, so this topic may not be related to me. So whatever I will be discussing today, you will appreciate that it has nothing to do with any branch of engineering. It is a very general topic that I am going to discuss today, and I hope that after the session is over, you will be able to appreciate that yes, there is lots and lots of information which is available, which does not require much engineering background, does not require engineering skills only to understand. Anyone can be a good product designer. Even a housewife who has a background of maybe humanities and social sciences can also become a product designer. Why? Because there will be some felt, some unfelt or unmet needs in the kitchen, which she may propose a solution just using her creativity. So what I am trying to emphasize is that please don't feel that the speakers will be speaking too technical language. We will not be able to understand or comprehend what they are speaking. So whatever topics will be covered will be very generic topics, and it will lead to orientation of your thought process towards design thinking. So I think I will share my screen and try to wind up. As we have told you that our session today is scheduled from 11:30 to 1 p.m. So I will not go beyond 1 p.m. I will try to wind up before 1 p.m. only. And being the coordinator of the course, I am always available for all of you. So that even outside the session also, if you want to drop an email, you want some notes related to a specific topic, just feel free to get in touch with me over email or our DIC team. We have a very dedicated DIC team. We have Mr. Rachit Birla, we have Mr. Vishal Sharma, Mr. Yudhveer Singh. So all of them are working with us at DIC. So we can take advantage of this very dedicated team. Just drop an email at our email ID. We will be able to get back to you with whatever possible help that we can provide to you. Even for conducting events, if you feel there is a brilliant idea that has come to your mind, or once the situation improves, your students want to visit IIT Roorkee, we have a scheme under which we host the students for 1 day. Even if they want to come for 4 to 5 days along with few faculty members, you can plan that also. We can do a 3-day or a 5-day workshop for your students. That also we are doing under our DIC umbrella. Also, if such similar program, we have funds for organizing 1 to 2 programs in a semester. If we feel that there is a topic, we can get good audience on that topic, we can certainly go ahead with conducting a similar program also. So it is majorly based on your request, our availability as well as the availability of the funds. So if everything falls in place, similar events can easily be organized. Even we can put our proposal to the funding agencies, different funding agencies is also through the Department of Design, which has recently been launched at IIT Roorkee. It was in news for the last 8 to 10 days with lot of positive reviews coming in for setting up of Department of Design at IIT Roorkee. So I will start share my screen. This was the background, how we can engage. Just let me share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible, sir.
Okay, so the topic is the very first introductory topic of product design, and some of the things that Professor Vanita from National Institute of Design, whatever she has spoken, I have just put it in my presentation prior to that. So I was happy that our thought process is at least aligned. We may not have achieved the distinction as Professor Vanita has achieved, being the director of NID and a very accomplished academician. But we are certainly on the right track, because whatever examples she has given, those were there in my slide prior to just going through the inaugural function. So I am happy that at least we think on the same page related to that design thinking. Now, coming on to what Professor Vanita was emphasizing, if you focus on the innovation sweet spot, you can see there is an innovation sweet spot. Just let me see if I can give a pointer. Okay, no problem. I will see to that later. Now, what is innovation? Because our title is on product and process innovation. So product and process, all of us know, because all of us are using, I am speaking to you or interacting with you through this laptop, which is a product. There is a process that we went through, all of us, in the morning. That is the inaugural function, which was a process which had a sequence, how the speakers will be interacting with the participants. So all of us know about what do we mean by a process, what do we mean by a product. But the new word that has been introduced in the faculty development program as the title is the product and process innovation. Now, innovation that we see, the definition is also given. We will come to the definition maybe a bit later. But there are three important points which Professor Ahuja mentioned: the met or the unmet needs, or the unknown or the known needs of the customer. So that is basically the desirability, which tests whether your innovation is solving the right customer problem. Now, sometimes the customer may be knowing that this product is required. Many times the customer may not even be knowing that there is a unfelt need, which, as Professor Ahuja told, related to the mobile phone. Before, when we were students studying engineering, there were no mobile phones at that time, and never we felt there is a need of a mobile phone. So there can be different types of needs. So that is basically the circle of desirability. Then there is a circle of feasibility, which tests whether your innovation strengthens your business, because all organizations want to be profitable organizations. They want to make profit, and therefore that also has to be seen that if the product is being developed, which is going to satisfy a felt or unfelt need of the customer, whether it is also going to have a synergic effect on our business. And finally, the viability, which will talk about your value chain for long-term sustainability. So viability also is equally important, because we have to see that whether the innovation that we are going to do is going to be sustainable, long-lasting, and it is going to have a positive impact on our business. So we see that there are the three important things. First thing is desirability, whether that development or that process improvement or the new product development is required or not required. Second is feasibility, whether it is going to have a positive impact on our business. And third thing is the sustainability, that whether it can be sustained for a longer period of time or not. So all these three things have to be combined together, and there we get a innovation sweet spot, which means that there may be some innovations which are desirable, which are required, but then they may not be feasible or viable. There may be some innovations which may be viable but may not be desirable. Then there may be some innovations which are feasible but they may not be desirable and viable. So we have to see that there is an innovation sweet spot. So what is this sweet spot depicting? It is depicting any new product development or any new product or any new process which has to be innovated or improved, which is required, which is feasible, and which is sustainable. So if all these three conditions are met, that is condition of desirability, condition of feasibility, and condition of viability, then we can say that this is the innovation sweet spot. That if all these three conditions are met, then we can say that innovation will happen. Now, innovation, as what do we know about the definition? We can see here, innovation is the commercial application of an idea. So always there must be a new or an innovative idea that will improve the existing product or create the new products, services, industries. So the title could have been product innovation, but we are talking about product and process innovation. So which means that it is not only the physical or tangible products which will see innovation. We will have innovation in terms of processes also. As Professor Ahuja told, I will also be showing one example of assembly line innovation. So therefore innovation can be in the processes, and as Professor Ahuja pointed out towards the end of her inaugural address, innovation can also be in terms of the systems. So there can be product innovation, there can be process innovation, there can be system based innovation, which we say that there is a innovation or a new industry has been created because of a new system required by the country or required by the state or required by the town or required by the district. So there can be systemic innovation, there can be product innovation, there can be process innovation. So I will not be coming to this slide again. So let me read this definition for all of you once again. Now, innovation is the commercial application. Commercial application. Many times we do research and development and we come up with a new material. So that can be called as a research and development activity, that we have developed a new material. But then if it has to be called as an innovation, then that product or the material that we have developed must be taken to the level of commercialization. And therefore we have suggested the topic, that is product and process innovation, starting from the basic concepts that we are trying to discuss today and finally leading to the commercialization. Because here we see in the basic definition of innovation, innovation is the commercial application. It is not only the research and development, it is also taking it to the market. That is commercial application of an idea. Now, what is that idea? It must be able to improve any existing product, or even it must be able to create a new product, or it must be able to create or improvise an existing service or create an industry. Now, what is the innovation process? As we see that, let us focus on the diagram on the right hand side. So you have ideas. Now these ideas will be evaluated on a certain set of criterion. Now those criterion will lead further to the shortlisting of the ideas, and finally the ideas will be tested and finally leading to the launch. So which means that from idea to the launch is the overall innovation process. So it does not leave at just the publication of a research article. Suppose we do some experimental investigation and then we use a scientific approach of design of experiment or Taguchi's method, or we use a RSM approach. So we use a standard experimental design approach, and then we finally are able to get some results which establish some new facts or which substantiate or corroborate some already existing facts. So we are able to establish some facts, but that does not lead to the application of that idea in the form of launching of a new product or launching of a new material which can be used by product designers for designing their products. So until and unless we reach to the level of launching or commercial application of our idea, we cannot call it as a comprehensive or a holistic innovation process. So innovation process is the sum of all the activities needed to, again, I have highlighted commercially apply the innovative idea. So you may have a very, very brilliant idea which is meeting some of the unfulfilled need of the customer, but until and unless it is commercially applied, we will not term it as a holistic innovation. So it starts with identifying a problem and creating a solution that addresses a customer need. So that need may be felt or unfelt, identified or non-identified. So all those things have to be taken care of. Now we can see that what are the different approaches to innovation. As ma'am told that there isn't only a product or a physical innovation in terms of a tangible product. There can be process innovation. So here we see that various approaches to innovation is based on several factors. It is based on the object of innovation. So we may have a product innovation or a process innovation, and that is the title of our program, that is product and process innovation. Then based on how the market evolves, we can have technological innovation and a business model innovation. So we will see certain examples during the course of this program, which will be focusing on technological innovation. Certain examples we will see where the business model has been modified and some new innovation or innovative ideas have been developed for the supply chain management or for other applications as well. So we are just trying to today understand the basic concepts, the definitions that will be used in the coursework during this complete week. Now, product innovation, there are two terms that we are going to use quite often, that is product innovation and process innovation. Now, product innovation is defined as the development driven by a desire to improve the properties and performance of the finished product. So that is one type of product innovation where we try to improve the properties and performance of the products. Now, objectives of product innovation may be to develop new products. You can see here that is very, very important. It is not only improving the properties of the existing products. We need to develop new products also. So therefore, I will show you some examples towards the end of my session that the ideas which have been put into at least the next level of thinking or design thinking in the form of prototypes by the students in the course that I teach here at IIT Roorkee on product design and development. So here we see that objectives of product innovation may be a new product development, improve the product properties, improve the product quality, and there is a big etc. there, which means that it doesn't stop only at the product development or a new product development or improving the quality. You can try to reduce the weight of the product. It will improve the performance of the product for the customer. You can reduce the cost of the product, which will add value to the customer or to the money that the customer is spending to get the product. So therefore, it's not only the quality, it is the cost, it is the performance, it is the serviceability. There are so many factors that we have to factor in while we are designing a new product. So we will come to that how complete product development takes place. But let us just try to first understand that what basically is product innovation. So it is not only new product development, it is also including the improvement in the existing product in terms of cost, in terms of weight, in terms of performance, in terms of efficiency, in terms of quality, in terms of effectiveness. So we can have improvement in the existing products as well. Now, product innovation work is primarily effectiveness driven. So we have to see that how effectively we are able to translate the requirements of the customer into a commercial product or into a product which can be launched to satisfy the needs and requirements of the customer. So whatever I have spoken is highlighted in the form of this classification diagram, which is going to give you an idea about what product innovation includes. Now, product innovation includes development of a new innovative product which has to solve an old customer need in a new way. So example is given here, book readers, which was taken by Professor Vanita also, that is Kindle, or action cameras such as GoPro. So we see that there is a customer need, but then that has been satisfied by a product innovation in the form of Kindle. Then the second type of innovations that we normally call, if you read a good book on innovation, you will see incremental innovation. Now in incremental innovation, we will see improvement of an already existing product. So here we have new models like Apple or any branded mobile phone which come out every year. So wherever we see that there is a already existing product, for example, mobile phones have already been developed. Now there can be incremental innovations. There are few apps which can help us or make our life easy. So those will fall under the incremental innovation category or classification. So we have new product development. Normally in books you will find it as NPD, that is new product development. Then you have improvement or incremental innovations which will improve the performance or the functionality of the product. So that is the basic understanding of product innovation. Now coming on to the process innovation, ma'am has taken the same example which I have mentioned here, is of Henry Ford's assembly line. Now, but before going to the example, let us first understand what do we mean by process innovation. Now product innovation, already we have seen the very fundamental classification in the product innovation. We have seen that it can lead to a new product development or it can lead to an improvement in the existing product. Now let us see that what do we mean by process innovation. Now in process innovation, it is defined as a development driven by internal production objectives. So the customer, as Professor Vanita told, may not be knowing that there is a process innovation happening in the organization which is delivering this product to me. For example, if I am buying a mobile phone of a specific company, I may never come to know that what process innovation they have done in their organization so that the performance of my phone has improved or the efficiency of my phone has improved or the battery life of my phone has improved. So I may not be able to get that information about the process innovation, but what I will get is improved performance of the product. Until and unless I am in academics, I read research papers, I read about innovation, I read about what developments are taking place in various organizations. If I am an enthusiast of that nature, then I may come to know about the process innovations also. But as a regular user of a product, I may never get an idea that how the process has been innovated by the organization. So process innovation is defined as development driven by internal production objectives. Now, what can be such objectives? Now, such objectives may be reduction of production cost, so that the benefits can be passed on to the customers. Higher production yields, we can try to improve our productivity for the given set of input. Improvement of production volumes, we may try to produce more number of products in the given time. Sometimes product recoveries can be our objectives. Environment friendly production can be our objective in terms of process innovation. So we improvise our process in a way that our whole process has minimum detrimental effect on our environment, or we improve on our carbon performance. We reduce the carbon footprint of the whole process. So therefore, the product innovation is something which is visible to the customer. Process innovation is something which is not visible or invisible to the customer. Now, this type of innovation is not visible to the final user, but it is only done at the company level. What it leads to minimizing the production cost, improving the production processes, eliminating the barriers in the production process. There may always be certain bottlenecks. There may be some problems during the production. There may be a machine which is acting as a bottleneck machine. It is regulating the overall production volume that is being produced by the company, because being the slowest operation or the slowest process. So therefore, we can see that what type of innovation we can include there so that our line or production line is balanced. So what I want to say, the learners who are not from mechanical engineering, maybe you can just understand that there is a process starting from the procurement of raw materials to the launch of the product in the market, or whatever you have bought in the last few years. If you can just take an example of a mobile phone or a laptop or a household item that you have bought, or a refrigerator or a television set or a LED or a printer, whatever product you have bought has been transformed from the raw materials into the final product. So that is the process we are talking about. That's right from the materials using certain transformation techniques or processes, it has been converted into the final product. So that process of converting these raw materials to the final product, if we are improving, if we are trying to come up with certain new developments in those processes, that will fall under the broad gambit of process innovation. It will lead to a better price for the customer. Now, process innovation examples are given here. Henry Ford's assembly line. So this is the most famous example of process innovation. Assembly line reduced the production time of a car, as we have seen that the benefits can be multifold. It can not only be reduction of price for the customer, but it can be reduction in time, reduction in labor, reduction in materials that we are using. So here in this example, if you see, the assembly line reduced the production time of a car from 12 hours to only 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So we can see from 12 hours, the production time or the assembly time was reduced to 2.5 hours. Similarly, the second process innovation that is mentioned here is Google's 20% project, which is another process innovation example. The project allows Google employees to work on personal projects for 20% of their working time. And this led to this kind of a process innovation led to the development of the Gmail that all of us use these days. So we have seen till now the basic idea about product innovation and the basic idea about the process innovation. Because during this complete faculty development program, there will be different speakers. Someone may focus his talk on product innovation. Some of the others may focus their talk on process innovation. So I am trying to set up a tone that you understand the terms being used during the next lectures. Now, this is the Global Innovation Index, which I told in the inaugural session, as we are happy to see that India has entered the top 50 nations for the first time. And it has retained its position as the most innovative country among Central and South Asian countries. So we have the potential, we have that talent pool, we have, as the age dividend and the demographic dividend in the morning Professor Vanita was addressing, we have a lot of young generation and the creativity is highest when you are young. So our young generation has the potential to become innovators, to become entrepreneurs. So therefore, we are slowly and steadily improving our rankings in the Global Innovation Index, and we have entered into the top 50. So India ranks 48 in Global Innovation Index, which certainly is not where we belong to. We certainly can jump further and come up into the top 10 countries or top 10 innovative countries in the world. How, depending upon our talent pool or young creative minds that we have in the country, only thing that we need to focus is on design thinking about always the products, the needs, the whys, the hows of each and every product that we use. Now, that how that can be achieved from system point of view, we are organizing this faculty development program, and we got around 130 applications from various faculty members across country. Now, these faculty members or the participants who are part of our family now, being a FDP family for the next 1 week, and certainly we will continue our discussions in this direction. Now you have to further take these ideas to the next level, that is percolate these ideas, disseminate this information among your students, among other faculty colleagues. Give topics which are innovative, which bring in a certain set of commercialization or into the products that you are trying to develop, the processes that you are trying to work on. So if we focus from the last gap that is missing, because when we maybe slightly I am digressing from the topic, but it is really important to understand that what or the problem, where we are lacking. Now our rankings are improving steadily. Only thing that we need to focus, just a minute. Only thing, just. Okay, sorry for the interruption. As Professor Mahajan introduced in the morning, I am the head of the department for Department of Design, but I am the faculty member in Department of Mechanical and Industrial Engineering. And my boss, the head of the Department of Mechanical Engineering, had called me, so it is important for me to take that call. So I have requested him that I am taking a lecture. I will speak to him. So he has just allowed me to continue with the lecture, and he told that we will be speaking after the session. So what I was trying to emphasize is the importance of these rankings. Now, what and where we are lacking, that we were trying to understand that all of us are teachers, and once a project that we are supervising, it can be a bachelor's project or a BTech project, it can be a master's level project or a MSc, MTech, MURP or MMarc project, or it can be a PhD thesis that we are supervising. So what happens is that we are focused on publications, patenting our innovation, and then maybe we are not able to take it to the market. So that is the only point, the last gap that we have to address, that once the report is ready, we have an idea, it may lead to a process innovation, it may lead to a product innovation. So we have to then prototype it, we have to test that idea, and we must try to take that idea to the market. So that last gap or the last area we need to address, that is between the report writing to the final launch of the product in the market. And these design innovation centers have been created not only to conduct fundamental research, although that is also required, because without doing research we may not be able to come up with new products and processes. But then the major focus is on that whatever projects, whatever products students are trying to develop in their BTech project or in their master's dissertation or a PhD thesis, those must be taken to the market. Whatever maximum projects can be taken to the market, that will certainly improve our rankings in the Global Innovation Index. So therefore, I am requesting all of you that whatever products or processes you develop, or whatever theses or dissertation or projects you students undertake under your supervision, those must be with this design thinking, that some of these, I can understand not all, because there will be certain projects which will be purely fundamental in nature. Those are also equally important. But whatever projects can be taken to the next level of commercialization, those must be taken. And design innovation centers will certainly help these type of project ideas. We have a scheme under Design Innovation Center which we call as the P2P scheme, that is project to product. So your project has been completed, but it has come up with a very, very good design of a new product which can be launched in the market. So Design Innovation Center tries to help the innovator or the students or a group of students along with the faculty members in taking their idea from the project level to the final product level. So that will help us to improve our rankings in the Global Innovation Index. So these indices are important because they help us or guide us or motivate us to put effort so that we improve our position globally. Now, coming on to the product design steps, as you can see on the screen. So you have synthesis, sketching, analysis, selection, basic engineering, detailed design, prototype, manufacturing, operation, product development. So we see that this is the broad sequence. You take up any good book on product design and development, you will not see these steps, because these steps may be specific to a specific book. So you will find some other steps, but the basic theory or the summary will remain the same. So you can see the basic steps are synthesis or need or idea generation. Then maybe we do some rough sketching of that idea, how the product would look like. Then we analyze. We will see in detail that how we analyze a product idea. Then we select a few ideas which are feasible, which are sustainable, and then we try to do some basic engineering. For example, we try to develop a four-wheeler or a car. now maybe we have so many cars all around us, so we have to see that what new design we are going to do, some aesthetic modifications, shape modifications in the car. We will do some rough sketching on that. And if you see the advertisements carefully, there are certain advertisements which focus more on the aesthetic aspects of the product, and there are few advertisements which focus more on the functional aspects of the product, but both lead to the new product development. So therefore we have to follow this system of product design steps, and once we follow them religiously, we will be able to come up with a new product idea or a new product which can be launched in the market. So idea generation is a backbone of any new product development, and these are the steps. These are not the we can say the standard steps. There you will always find in different books different steps they may have mentioned, but the basic thoughts behind those steps will remain the same. So the four important points that normally I try to emphasize when we talk about these steps is that we have idea generation, then we have screening of ideas, then we have engineering design or a basic engineering and detailed design. The next step is the prototyping of that design, because we have the design in the form of a CAD model, or we have a design in the form of a engineering drawing, and then we try to do a prototyping. We test the prototype under different conditions, and finally we launch the product. We manufacture it, and then we launch the product in the market. So these are the 4 or 5 broad steps that every organization undertakes for new product development process. But that is not important, because those steps may vary from company to company. Research and development is an integral part of every positive thinking organization. So therefore, the research activity is continuous. And once you get certain tangible output from research, that output is then converted in the form of a product. But the analysis part is very, 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 very important when we are trying to develop a product, or we are going to go for a product innovation. Now let us see that we do the marketing aspects of the product. We try to study that what is the expected demand for the product. Both short-term and long-term demands are taken into account. Secondly, we focus on the functions that are offered by the product, whether they are desirable and acceptable to the customers. So we focus on the requirement. So these are not the only 2 steps that we go to the market with. We try to understand the demographics, who are going to be our customers, what are their tastes, what are their specific requirements. As we have seen the example Professor Vanita gave in the morning, the product was launched but was not that successful. What are the reasons thereof? So she pointed out the important reason of marketing. So that is an important, most important, I must say, that to assess the pulse of the customer, that what the customer actually wants. So we have to see that how or which segment of society this product is going to be used for, or who are going to be the major or majority of the customers who are going to use this innovation. So all that type of understanding is developed at the marketing stage. The complete market research or analysis is carried out to understand that what the customer actually wants. And there are scientific tools or logical tools like quality function deployment, which try to understand the voice of customers, that what the customer actually want and what importance or criteria the customer gives to the various technical requirements of the product. Sometimes, for example, all of us may buy an automobile. Some of us may have bought a scooter. Some of us may have bought a car. What do? We look at the mileage. We look at the safety. We look at the looks of or the aesthetic appeal or the shape of the automobile. We look at the brand value. So there are different parameters on which we evaluate the different automobiles which are available in the market. So maybe there is a standard method of understanding the voice of customers and then relating it with the technical requirements which can be included in the product, so that our product becomes an acceptable selectable product from every customer point of view, but that may not be possible that we are able to get customers across the diverse spectrum of the society. But certainly our product will be aimed at a specific segment of our customers, and if we are able to meet the needs and requirements of those customers, certainly the product will become successful in the market. So first and foremost is understanding that what we need to develop. Actually, when we talk about new product development, we need to find answers to some of the very, very simplistic questions like what we need to develop, when we need to develop that product, how we need to develop that product, why we need to develop that product. So if we start asking questions like how, what, why, when, we will certainly start getting answers to these questions, which will help us in our overall product development process. So first step that we need to ask these questions is during the marketing aspects only, because we will have to benchmark the idea that we are going to develop in the form of a product against the products which are already existing in the market, that how my product or our product is going to be better in terms of competition with the existing products, or how it is going to be better, or what is going to be the unique selling point of this product as compared to the competitive products. Once we have identified that what needs to be developed, then we go to the functional aspects of the product, operational aspects of the product. We try to understand that what will be the durability, what will be the dependability of this product. We try to understand the aesthetic aspects of the product. So all these are product characteristics that we try to analyze once we have our idea in our mind. The idea is then subjected to the analysis in terms of how it is going to achieve the desired function, what are the operational, how it is going to be operated. The operations must be simple. Many times we see that we buy a mobile phone and we start using it without reading the manual, and we find it very, very difficult to learn how to use it. So that means that that particular organization needs to work on the operational aspect of its product, that how the product can be made user friendly. That is, many times we use the terms UX, UI, user experience, user interfacing. So we have different types of UX, UI designs that have to be taken into account when we are designing the operational aspect of our product. Similarly, the durability and dependability, aesthetics, maybe I can speak on these topics for a long time. And these topics are very popular these days. As Professor Rishikesh told in the morning, that product and process innovation are the key topics in today's business environment. And these topics are popular from the point of view of learning the students are doing these days. As many of you may be knowing and some of you may not be knowing, for them it's a new information that there are courses available on NPTEL also related to product design. And I am also happy to share that I have 3 courses which are related to product development, broader domain of product development. One course is a very basic course, that is 10-hour course on product design and development. Then there is another course on product design using value engineering. And then there is a third course on product design, manufacturing guidelines for product design. So all these courses are popular. Recently, I received one email from an organization that can I offer that course on manufacturing guidelines for product design for their employees, and we are discussing the schedule, that when it can be done or whether it can be done in a physical mode or an online mode. So the discussion is going on. So what I am trying to emphasize is that these are the important topics, but maybe today I will keep my discussion to an overview only. Otherwise, all these aspects like operational aspects, durability, dependability, aesthetics can be discussed at length. But as a learner of a topic of product design, we have to see that when we are analyzing our product idea, we have to first focus on the marketing aspects. We have to focus on the product characteristics. We have to focus on economics. Because no company, as we have seen in the very first slide, that we have to get that innovation sweet spot, that it should be viable, it should be desirable, it must be sustainable. So therefore, we have to see the viability or the feasibility of the product idea. Also, we have to see the profit consideration, that whatever investment that we are going to do in developing that idea into the product, whether we can expect some ROI, what kind of return on investment we can expect, what can be the profit consideration for that idea. Then we can also look at the effect of standardization, simplification, and specialization, because these three terms, 3S, are very important. We should focus on standard parts. We should try to simplify the product, not offering too much variety to the customer, because as you go for pro variety, if you try to develop too many variants of your product, in that case, your manufacturing becomes complicated. And therefore, you will see that many companies have standard products or standard variants of their products. So if you want to have a customized product as per your requirement, then the production process has to be very, very versatile. And sometimes it may lead to the escalation or increase in the cost also. So therefore, as a product designer, we have to also take a decision that what is the possible level of simplification we should include in our product or in our products. For example, we can keep the sizes. If suppose the size of a shirt can be 38, 40, 42, 44. So that can be the standard sizes that any company can produce. So that is the idea of simplification. Whereas the other extreme of simplification can be variety, that you get the shirt as per your own measurement. So that can be the other extreme, but then that shirt will only be produced for your own consumption. So therefore, we have to see as product designers, when we are analyzing our idea, that what kind of variants we can provide to the or offer to the customers. Then we have to do the break-even analysis, which is also an important economic term, that how many products we need to sell to achieve the break-even point, from where on we start getting profits. And the other terms that are the fourth is the production aspect. So whenever we are analyzing any idea or new product idea, we have to focus on the marketing aspects. We have to focus on the characteristics of the product. We have to focus on the economics that are associated with that product or the product idea. And we have to see the production aspects, that how this product will be developed. Now, I told you just a few minutes back related to the courses that have been developed under NPTEL. So the first course, that is product design and development, is majorly focused on all these aspects and gives an overview about the new product development. The second course, that is product design using value engineering, is focused on whatever I have highlighted in the product characteristics, that is the functional aspect. So product design using value engineering course, it is a 10-hour course which is completely focused on the functional aspects of the product. And the third course that we have developed on NPTEL is the manufacturing guidelines for product design, and that is focused on the last aspect on your screen. Those are the production aspects. So all of us study processes like casting, welding, joining, adhesive joining, machining. So we know all these processes, but then as a product designer, we should have some basic idea that if I am specifying a particular shape or a particular material for a specific product design, how the product will be manufactured, or what guidelines I must keep in mind when I am designing a product so that it is easy to manufacture. So these terms that you see on your screen, I will be covering them briefly in the subsequent slides, where we'll be talking about design for manufacturing, design for assembly, and in general, both of these fall under the broad umbrella of design for X, which normally the books refer to as design for excellence. So we have to see that how the product design must include features which are easy to manufacture, which are easy to assemble. So the X is a variable. We can say design for excellence can be done. We can have terms like design for manufacturing and assembly. I will show you some slides related to that with few examples. Then we can have design for reliability. We can have design for quality. We can have design for environment. We can have design for sustainability. So whatever product we are designing, it will include a lot of different aspects that need to be taken care of. So overall, if you have a new product idea or you want to innovate, all these aspects needs to be taken care of once you are analyzing your product idea. Now I have specially highlighted the functional aspects because these are the important aspects. Why? Because we buy a product so that it will achieve certain function for us. I am using this laptop to interact with all of you. So this is not only helping me to interact or communicate, it helps me to design my presentations. It helps me to do certain calculations. Maybe it helps me to run certain programs. So therefore, it is a multifunctional product. That is a laptop that I am using. So as a product designer or the designers who are developing this laptop or designing, sorry, not developing, prior to development, there will be design. So those who are designing these laptops will always be taking note of what the user experience is. Who are the potential users who are using our product? What are the difficulties they are encountering? How we can improve their experience or the user experience? So those kind of thinking is normally studied in the functional aspects of the product. Now, what they are trying to offer me as a customer is a good product, which is a laptop that I am using. So they are providing me certain value. I have spent some money to get this product. Now I have spent some price or the cost to get this product, but this is providing me certain function. So the functional aspects normally focus on the two important points. That is, what is the function of the product and what is the cost of the product. So whatever money I am spending, whether it is helping me to get that desired function for which the product has been bought. So that is the basic concept of value engineering. So this is an important point that I am introducing. Many of you may be knowing about this concept, but maybe just to introduce this concept to those of you who may not have studied this as a course. So we have also recorded a course on product design using value engineering, where our focus has been on the functional aspects of the product. Although these are not existing in silos, all these aspects are related to each other. For example, if we add too many functions into the product, its operations become difficult. So it will have a adverse effect on the operational aspects of the product. So if we want to simplify the operational aspects, we may have to compromise with some of the functional aspects of the product. So there is always a trade-off between the various aspects. If we want to make a very, very durable and dependable product, then the material selection for that product has to be in line with ensuring the time span or the design life of the product, which may lead to a slight escalation in the cost. So therefore, cost, durability, dependability, quality, operations, functions, all these are interrelated, and therefore the product designer need to holistically need to have an overview, or he must try to have overall analysis rather than focusing on a specific analysis. For example, only trying to improve the functional aspects, because we need to understand that how these functional aspects can further affect the other aspects as well. So therefore, functional aspects are important. At the same time, all other aspects are also important. But I want to just introduce this new concept of value engineering. What is value engineering? As you can see, the definition is there on your screen. So it is an organized study of functions. Why do we need to study the functions of the product? To satisfy the user's need with a quality product. So the product must be of good quality at the lowest life cycle cost through applied creativity. So what we have to do is we have to be very, very creative in our approach. We have to ask questions like how, why this product, why this is being done in this manner only, why this can't be done in a better manner, or what can be the best way of doing this job, or what can be a better function which can be included in this product. So questioning will improve our creativity. So the questions must be logical. It should not be just for the sake of questioning. You must focus on the problem with a clean slate. There is a term called uh, it was mentioned in the Samuel Elian's book, which is called as the attitude screen. So each one of us, when we are born, has a blank attitude screen, but with time, the screen keeps on filling up. We have some prejudices. I like this vegetable. I don't like this vegetable. I like this taste of ice cream. I like butterscotch. Somebody may like vanilla. Somebody may like chocolate. That similar is the case with the flavors of the cakes that we eat. So therefore, whenever we are thinking of a new product development, we should overcome all these prejudices. We should be with a clean slate, with a clear attitude screen. We should try to target or try to attack this problem of a new product development or a new product design, because if we go into product design process with our prejudices, certainly there will be certain decisions that we will be taking may not be good for the product. So we should be creative. We should attack the problem of product design with a very clear frame of mind, with a very clean frame of mind. So that is related to applied creativity. So there are few things which have been highlighted here. An organized study of functions to satisfy the user's need with a quality product at the lowest life cycle cost through applied creativity. So highlighted are functions which are going to satisfy what users need. Quality of the product or performance is important, and cost, overall life cycle cost must be low. Now, how we can achieve this? How we can offer these functions to satisfy the user need to the customer, ensuring the quality of the product? That can be achieved by using our creativity. Now, what is not value engineering? Some of you may feel that the functions can be achieved, try to reduce the cost, but then it becomes cost cutting. Then the quality product that is mentioned in the definition is not achieved, because then we are compromising with the quality or performance or efficiency of the product, and then we are trying to reduce the cost. So that is going to be called as cost cutting, where we are compromising with the product. But in value engineering, we try to provide the same value, same functions without compromising any quality or any performance of the product. So what is not value engineering? So cost cutting is not value engineering. Design review is not value engineering. Project elimination is not value engineering. So whatever is mentioned here is not value engineering. So what is value engineering? So value of a function is defined as the relationship of cost to performance. So we can see that for any customer, as a product designer, we will try to maximize the value of the product. How it can be maximized? It can be maximized if we improve the performance of the product. At the same time, we try to reduce the cost, or at the same cost, we try to improve the performance. So there can be different combinations here. Improve the performance, keep the cost same, or keep the performance same but try to reduce the cost, or improve both, increase the performance and increase the cost also. As I told you that if you try to make a very reliable product, so if you want to improve the reliability, sometimes adding additional systems to make the overall system reliable, or it may lead to escalation or increase in the cost. But then the overall performance or improvement in the performance must offset the increase in the cost. So it is not only cost cutting, that when you are doing a value engineering and you are doing the functional analysis of the product, it must be with the sole objective of reducing the cost of the product. In many cases, you will see the cost has increased, but the overall performance of the product has increased multifold as compared to the increase in the cost. So overall rate of increase or rate of improvement of performance is higher as compared to the rate of increase of cost. So overall value has improved. So that is the basic concept of value engineering. And if you are interested, you can read. There is a very good book written by one of the lead authors in the field of value engineering, that is Lawrence D. Miles, L.D. Miles. If you Google Lawrence D. Miles, you can even find out some of the topics that he has written in his book on Google. Maybe you can think of purchasing that book. It is a good book with a lot of case studies, successful implementation of value engineering. techniques, but just I wanted to introduce this concept of value engineering. Now, how this is done is with the help of a fast diagram that you see on your screen. That is functional analysis system technique. So it is a very general fast diagram. So wherever we are writing functions here, you will have a specific function which can be transmit current or transmit torque, or it can be illuminate transparency. So for any product you can do this fast diagramming approach, or you can use this fast diagramming approach to solve any problem using the value engineering. Now, how this will help you? This will help you to eliminate some of the unnecessary functions that are there in the product but are not being used by the customer or not delivering any value to the customer. So therefore, how we can do this? We start asking questions. I told you creativity will come when you start challenging, you start asking why this way, why not that way. So here also we start asking how and why type of questions and try to write down the functions of the product, and then we try to see which are the functions which are not at all required in the product, which can be eliminated by some. How these can be eliminated? By combining certain functions together. We can also come up with a new technology which has come up. For example, if you find out any fast diagram, for example, the one that is available on internet very readily is a fast diagram for overhead projector. I have not included in my slides here, but one of the diagrams of fast diagram for the product is overhead HP that we normally use. Just a minute. Sorry for the interruption. The battery was going down for the system. So the overhead projector diagram is available on internet. You can see that. So you will see that various functions of the overhead projector are mentioned, from the lower order function to the higher order function. The higher order function will be, why do we use a OHP or a LCD projector? To teach the students. So the higher order function will be teach students, the lower order function will be provide power, provide transparency. So that way you will see that there are opportunities where the developments can be done. And one of the development that we have seen is nowadays we are using less overhead projectors, but we are using more LCD projectors. Now, what were the problems with the OHP? The major problems were the bulb that we are using, it consumed energy, and then there was a fan which was used to cool the bulb. Now in the current LCD projectors, if you see, there may be a cooling arrangement, but not as the one we used to have in the OHP. So certain improvements or certain parts, equipment which is there in the product may not be the latest one, or it can be excluded with slight modification in the design, but it adds a lot of value to the customer. So therefore, the fast diagramming approach helps us to break down the overall product into the individual components, and then we try to understand the function of each and every component that is being used in that product, and try to see that whether it is achieving the basic function or it is achieving a secondary or a tertiary function. So if there are few tertiary functions, we try to see that how best we can achieve those tertiary functions and how the cost can be improved or cost can be reduced, but at the same time without compromising the performance of the product which we are offering to the customer. So therefore, we see that the fast diagramming is an important approach which can be used. So I am having a look at the time also, so I don't want to overspend time. Now I will quickly talk about the design for X. This is also an important approach in product design, which is the design for excellence. Now the X can take any it can be taking any value. So we can have design for manufacturing, design for assembly, design for manufacturing and assembly, design for production. And if you see the diagram, there are so many different X values. They are there: design for cost, design for service, design for safety, design for assembly, design for reliability, design for quality. So we will be talking about design for manufacturing only. And if you see that when we are designing a product, suppose this is a part which has to be used in our product. So when we are designing it, we have to see that what should be the central distance of this hole from the edge. So it is incorrect. it should not be less than T, that is the thickness of the sheet. This is just one guideline. The example I am trying to show that when we are designing a product, we should focus on this design for manufacturing aspects also. So there are a standard guideline which is mentioned in the books that the center distance of this hole must be at least 1.5 times to 2 times the thickness of the sheet that we are using. The sheet thickness is T. So this is just one design guideline that must be followed when you are designing a product. There are maybe thousands of such guidelines which are available in the textbooks, but the only thing is the product designer must keep in mind these guidelines when he or she is designing the product. So for the time being, I will skip this diagram because I wish to cover all the topics that are there. Then there are guidelines for design for assembly, because most of the products that you see, again I take the example of this laptop that I'm using. This has so many different parts which have been assembled together. So the designers must have kept in mind all these guidelines that you see on your screen. We try to minimize the part count. We try to design the parts with self-locating features. Many times you will see that you have to insert a SIM inside the mobile phone. So there is a slot which is exactly of the same size, and there will be maybe sometimes self-locking features also included. So you will design the parts with self-locating features, self-fastening features, minimize the reorientation of parts during assembly. So if you are doing the assembly, you should design your product in such a way that there is a base part, and on top of that you can assemble the other smaller or the child parts. So you can keep in mind that design the parts for retrieval, handling and insertion. Emphasize top down. Top down means, again, it is the same philosophy that you have a bigger part, on top of that you keep on assembling the smaller parts. Standardize the parts. It was one of the considerations in the economic analysis of the product also. The standardized parts will lead to very cost-effective design.
Sure,
and try
sir.
to minimize the use of fasteners, encourage the modular design. All of you may have heard about the modular kitchen designs these days. Design for a base part to locate the other components, design for component symmetry for insertion. Suppose two parts have to be assembled together, so they can be symmetric so that you can easily align them or easily assemble them. So that is the basic, you can say, guidelines. There are other guidelines also. I'm just trying to introduce some of the concepts which a product designer must keep in mind when he is trying to come up with a new product development. So we are trying to optimize the part or the system assembly. So this slide I will skip for the time being because I want to share some examples and the time is also going to be over. But I think I am sorry for the quality of the images because these have been taken from the book. The source of the book is given here. I think it is better to know about the source because you can read this book. All these examples are taken from this book by Boothroyd, Dewhurst and Knight, and this book is on product design for manufacture and assembly. So you can look at this book in your libraries or in the internet. It will be available. You can buy the book online. So this book gives so many different examples which must be kept in mind by a product designer. Now here I will read it for you. Minimize the part count by incorporating multiple functions into single parts. So therefore, I introduced the concept of functional analysis because we have to see what are the redundant functions which we don't want in our product or the customer doesn't want in their product. So we should try to reduce those parts by incorporating multiple functions into a single part, which means we must try to combine the various functions. Now here you see we are trying to develop or manufacture this cup in 3 different parts. So from design for assembly point of view, we have to try to make it in a single shot so that all the assembly operations can be minimized. So that is one good example. We should actually have in our product. We cannot have too many parts because it will increase the number of assembly operations, but we cannot have too less parts because then it will make the product design very complex and it will be difficult to manufacture. So therefore we will have to do a trade-off between the two. That is, we have to do a trade-off between the number of parts that are going to be used as well as the complexity of the individual part. So we have to see that the number of parts should be less, but at the same time the parts should be easy to manufacture. Now here we see modularize multiple parts into single sub-assembly. So here we see there are 8 parts which have to be fixed on this, but here we only 2 parts can be fixed. 3 have been integrated into one module only. So modularize the multiple parts into single sub-assemblies. So this is another example. Here we see design the mating features for easy insertion. So these type of insertion are difficult. So we can have simple insertion. This is a good design, do's. So there are 2 pins here which can directly go here. So all these complex geometries sometimes you will find are difficult to assemble. So there can be multiple such examples which are given in this book, which you can just read and get an idea about what are the good design practices for any product designer. So I'm skipping this in the interest of the time. And now we come on to the relationship between the materials and the process, because every product will have a process which we have seen here. You may require holes, you may require assembly operations. If we go back and see, this is the example. This is one part which has to be used in a product. So it requires hole making operation. It requires machining. It may require casting. So there is a relationship which is given in the books. The source is also given. It is also given in the NPTEL course. So we see there are so many processes: sand casting, molding, machining, and there are materials: metal, ceramics, glass, elastomer, thermoplastic, thermosets, polymer foams, composites. So you have different materials, you have different processes. And I was, as an engineer, as a trained mechanical engineer, I was not even knowing that such type of information is also available. Before I started teaching a course on product design, and thereafter I came to know that this type of consolidated information is available for the product designers. Those of you who may not be having a engineering or a mechanical engineering background, so this type of information is useful for product designers, because here you see I am just taking just one example of a process material matrix which is given here, but there are process material, process shape, process mass, process section thickness, process dimensional tolerance, process economic batch size. So all these metrics or charts are available which product designers must refer to when they are designing a product. Now suppose their product is going to be a metallic product. From here they can see that for metals, which are the processes which can be used for making that product. If the material for their product is a plastic, thermoplastic or a thermoset, they can look here which are the processes which can be used for making that product. If they have to join the various parts to assemble the product, they can see vis-a-vis the various materials which joining processes can be used. Similarly, which machining processes can be used. So such type of information is very, very handy for the product designers or product innovators, because sometimes we have a brilliant idea, but we don't know that how this idea can be made into a product. So similar information can be taken by the designers. This is another process mass chart, that the size of the product will even guide you that what should be the process that we can use. So if you are having a very large size, very heavy metallic part you have to make, you can see sand casting is one of the process. So you may not be knowing as a product designer what are the finer intricacies of sand casting, but at least it can initiate a discussion that the size is large, it is a metallic part, then we can go for sand casting process for this product. Now, this is the last topic that I wish to discuss today, that is design for environment, which is very important, because in innovation, the sustainability is an important keyword which was shown in the very first slide. So design for environment is also equally important. Now, what is design for environment? I will be skipping some of the slides which are there after this. Now, design for environment is a method to minimize or eliminate the environmental impacts of a product over its life cycle. Now, the product will be used for 10 years or 15 years. So we have to see that during its life cycle and after the product has lived its life, means it has been broken down, or it has to be disposed of, or it has stopped working. What is going to happen to that product and how it is going to affect the environment? That is an important aspect that every product designer must keep in mind. And this has been included recently as one of the chapters in this book. As you can see, Product Design and Development by Carl Ulrich and Steven Eppinger. The source is given here. An important topic, especially when we are talking about the environment. And just few weeks back, we celebrated the World Environment Day. So as product designers, our focus must be on design for environment as well. So there are few slides, this reference I have given. So you can just go through this book, Product Design and Development by Carl Ulrich and Steven Eppinger. And it explains beautifully that how and what should be our focus. So these are the 5 important stages in any product. We get materials, we produce those materials into products. Products are distributed through the supply chains. Customers use the product, and then finally they have to be disposed of. So this is the green color has been shown because from sustainability point of view, all these steps must be environment friendly, or whatever decisions we take during these steps must have a positive impact on the environment rather than having a detrimental impact on the environment. And here you see in the industrial product life cycle, we generously take materials from environment, that is a natural biocycle. Whenever I take this session, I take the example of a wooden chair. So we take wood from our natural bio life cycle. We cut trees, we get wood, then we produce it. The carpenters will make a chair. That chair is used by the customers. And finally, after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whenever the lifespan of that chair is over, we can remanufacture, use the wood again, or we dispose it off. So what we must try to do is that we must try to make these arrows which are blue into green, which means whatever we do here, whatever processes we use, whatever distribution channels we focus on, whatever method we use that product, it must be environment friendly. So that is the basic concept of environment friendliness. So whatever we dispose of, so the summary of sustainability is that whatever we dispose of, but before disposing, whatever we use, whatever material we take from the natural biological life cycle, whatever materials we take from here, those must be coming from renewable resources, must not be coming from non-renewable resources. As well as whatever we dispose back into the environment, it must be organic, that is green. It must not be toxic and inorganic. So whatever products we are developing, if we develop them using sustainable materials, green materials, environment-friendly materials, at the end of the product life, it will be easier for us to dispose those materials back into the environment. Otherwise, what is going to happen? They are going to create toxins or inorganics into the environment, which may affect all of us in a, we can say, detrimental manner or in a bad way. So that is a basic aspect. Now, what are the conditions for sustainability? Eliminate the use of non-renewable natural resources. Eliminate the disposal of synthetic and inorganic materials that do not decay quickly. If I ask a question, name any 2 materials, I think everyone will be able to answer. And eliminate the creation of toxic waste through your products or your processes that are not part of the natural life cycle. So as a product designer or as a learner of product design, course of product design, we must also learn about this important topic of design for environment. Now quickly I will show some of the product I did in the class of product also written, that is written. This was a portable stool, flexible portable stool, which was designed by Mayur Leela. You can just have a look. It is made up of very simpler modular parts which can be assembled as per the requirement, as well as the layout of the class. It can be converted into multiple designs. This was a design of a compact twin waste dustbin, which was designed by the student Rachit Garg. You can see here, he was able to. This was specifically for kitchens which are smaller in size, where you cannot keep 2-3 different dustbins for the dry waste and the wet waste. So it is a single dustbin which can accommodate both the dry and the wet waste. This was a design of a wall holder by another student, Harshit Rawal, which you can see, which has magnets as well as the keys can be hanged here. This is a redesigning ice cube tray. Water filling process is efficient. Topless tray are prone to state taste of freezer burn, so there are problems. So this is a new design for the ice cube tray, which was proposed by one of the students in the class. So I think what is the time? I have overshot by 5 minutes, so I will stop speaking here. And I think, as far as my own estimation or evaluation of this session, I have been able to introduce the basic concept of product design, product innovation, process innovation, basic definitions with examples. We have been able to just have an overview of the product analysis. What are the various factors that we need to consider for product analysis? We have been able to study basic concept of value engineering and fast diagramming approach. We have been able to see the important aspect for design for manufacturing and design for assembly guidelines with certain very simple examples. And finally, we saw about the design for environment. But all these topics are maybe subjects in themselves. So each topic can be taught. For example, the design for manufacturing subject that we teach in a complete semester here as an elective course to our master's students. So all topics are much more detailed topics. Value engineering is also elective course for third year production and industrial engineering students at IIT Roorkee. So value engineering, design for sustainability, design for manufacturing, product design, all these are topics which are taught in a complete semester. But I have tried to summarize and give you a broad overview of the whole product design process. So with this, I'll stop. And if there are one or two questions we can take, otherwise our time was till 1 p.m. today. We got delayed by 10 minutes or 15 minutes during the inaugural function, but I don't have any regrets for that because all speakers were able to highlight the importance of the topic that all of us have selected for this faculty development program. So if there are a few questions you can ask, otherwise we will stop.
Thank you, sir, for types of the query. But do we consider the short-term and long-term social and environmental effects in the innovation process?
Sorry, please come
Thank you.
again. Your voice was in intermittently. It was breaking in the beginning. Towards the end, I could understand social and environmental impacts of long term. Sorry, please come again.
Do we consider short-term and long-term social and environmental effects in the innovation process?
Yeah, surely we have to see the social and environmental impact. I think the distinguished learner may have posted this question in the very beginning of the session because towards the end I talked about design for sustainability also. So we have to see the environmental impact. It is an important aspect of any good product design process, as well as the social implications of the product. The short term as well as the long term have to be taken into account. And as we saw, the demographic dividend term that was used by Professor Vanitha in the inaugural function, certainly people are at the core or at the hub of any product development process because the product is being developed for the people who are going to use it. So therefore, the social impact of the product also has to be taken into account.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we are done with the question.
Okay, I will suggest that even if there are further
engineering.
Okay, Aditi, I think there is some internet issue with your device. Maybe no problem. I will conclude here, and all learners, all participants are free to drop an email at dic iitr@iitr.ac.in. I think I will request Dr. Saurabh and Dr. Sachin and Rachit to share our email ID with the participants. Our means the DIC ID, so that they can drop the questions. Even you can drop your questions to me directly. So I think we will be meeting again and again during this program. This is a 5-day faculty development program with 2 sessions per day. So we close the first session today, and we will be meeting again in the evening when Professor Apurv Sharma, our Dean of Academic Affairs and the first coordinator of Design Innovation Center at IIT Roorkee, will be delivering his lecture, and his focus will be more towards the patents, that how the innovation process can be patented or innovative ideas can be taken to products or the processes which can further be patented. I think that's all from my side. If anybody has to say something, Professor Mahajan, Ashna, if you want to say something.
So that was indeed a very informative session given by you as always. And it's always a pleasure to listen to your words. Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us once again. And I think we will be meeting for the next session at 3 o'clock now. So we will be winding up with this session. And once again, Indradeep sir, I thank you.